What's going on, guys? Back with another Modified Rides podcast episode. Today, I have one of those OGs that I think he might have created the OG term. Someone that's been in it for a long time. That's if you've been with any of the lowrider or mini truck stuff, you know who he is. I want to welcome Casey Hardin. What's going on, Casey?
Hey, how's it going, man? I
Pretty
guess
good.
you're doing the bottom of the barrel here, as OGs. So
Well, you are kind of one of those OG when it comes to the scene. I think you're one of those fabricator builder type guys that have always had a vision a lot of people don't see, that you create stuff out of that. So, glad
well,
to have you on.
yeah, appreciate it, man. Thanks for the phone call.
You
And
know,
plug.
I think the first time me and you met was with Brandon Perry, which we had
Yeah,
on. Then a past episode when he was doing Mike Alexander's truck. Was that the first time I think we met?
I think that's the first time we met. He finished it, and everybody come over for that cruise down to Whitesburg and stuff. So
Yeah,
I think
because you
that's the
kind
first
of
time we
just
met.
stepped in and helped him finish that truck or whatever, didn't you?
Yeah, well, he wanted me for some sheet metal in the bed, and so we had some tools over there at the college I had. And him and John Norris actually came down, and we busted out some parts. Some of them worked, some of them didn't, you know, and finished that thing up and everything. So I mean, that was a late nighters right there.
I always say I think that's about the only vehicle Mike Alexander's ever finished because everything else is not finished when he gets rid of it.
That's what I keep on hearing. I keep on hearing, and I feel pretty good then, if I actually helped on that just a little bit. So
Of course, I was the one that shot it actually unfinished and done. I know I shot it at Brandon's house and it was unfinished, and then went back up there and he was still putting pieces together on it when, like, an hour before we shot the feature on it. So,
yeah, where'd you guys shoot that at?
down by the river by his house.
Okay.
I don't know. We just rode through, and there just happened to be a river, and it just worked with the background. And he drug it before he ever gave it to Mike because Mike wasn't even there. So
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. So
I think Brandon became the Toyota guru there for a while in that area.
yeah, he was. He was busting out all kinds of stuff up there, man. I mean, actually surprised, it was hot up there where he was. So
How'd you wind up meeting Brandon?
I met him through Lee Cottle down there in Whitesburg, Kentucky. He had that show going on, and for some reason, and I don't remember, I think Lee was going up there to his house for some
Yeah.
reason, and I think I went over there to meet him or something. Everybody else remembers better than I do, but I think I met him over there and met him for the first time. So
Yeah.
and there was chump change sitting in there.
Lee's podcast, he just says the H word. Well, we can say heritage on my podcast because
Yeah, yeah.
everybody went to that show, and the one hotel town that was there. So
Hey, I love that. I loved it. I love those small towns like that. So it's where I grew up.
so where did you grow up?
Moorhead, Kentucky. I guess, I mean, that's just, I mean, if you're talking to Lee sometimes says that's Eastern Kentucky. Sometimes he says it's not. But we're right on the edge in the hills right there. And we got a little Moorhead State University there. But
Okay.
I'm about 50 minutes from Huntington, I guess.
Well, I guess Kentucky was probably one of the mini truck meccas there for forever. With
Oh,
you, Jody Hall, like everybody
oh,
was in
man,
Kentucky for a while.
it was great right there. I always thought where I was and right near Lexington, over to Louisville, up to Indianapolis, over to Columbus, Ohio, that little triangle right there was just a mini truck and lowrider heaven, you know. So,
So
but
what got you into the mini truck world?
oh man, that's kind of a tough question. I don't know. My first vehicle. I mean, I was always into fishing, but before I was into 16, turned 16 in high school. And I was always into fishing. That's all I did. And then I turned 16, and my dad helped me get a 88 Toyota pickup, no, S10 pickup, little gray one, square body. And from there, man, I just was in love with it. So we used to go cruising all the time. I mean, my town was packed. cruising, and we hit all the small towns and go cruising, and you see something, and that's all it was. It was see something in town, go work on it during the week, go back and go cruising again, looking a little bit different, you know.
I
So
think
it was great.
I think the kids today don't understand the cruising aspect as big as it was. Like all the small towns. I mean, I guess Asheville, where I live, is not really that small of a town. I mean, but
Yeah,
in the scheme of things, it is. But everyone cruised. You know, we'd go over to Gatlinburg and cruise or something like. That's what we did on Friday and Saturday nights. It's how you
that's it.
picked up girls. That's how you hung out with your
Yeah.
buddies. Now they don't have that. No one cruises anymore.
Can't find it, makes me sick, but I guess that's just like, our parents, I mean, things just go to the wayside,
Well, I know my
But
my dad's age group here in town. They cruised. It was a different strip than we cruised, but they still cruised and went to the drive-ins or the
yeah,
uh, not the theaters, but the like the little hamburger shops and stuff. They did all that, but they've tried to bring cruising back here 2 or 3 times, and it just never works. These kids don't understand the concept of I'm going to make this loop 100 times tonight and use a whole tank of gas just to see
yep,
friends.
yep. $20, man. I could go all weekend and go about anywhere I wanted, and go
Now I don't
cruising
think
all
you
little
can get
towns.
Now I don't think you can get out of the gas station parking lot and go to the next gas station for 20
Nah,
bucks on gas.
not even close, man. I tell you how old it is.
So, we was talking before we started recording. So you said you accidentally come into the whole mini truck world. Tell us about that.
Oh, well, you know, I, the first thing I seen, and still to my mind, it's just plastered in my mind. First thing I loved was in my hometown. This guy had this little Chevy Love long bed, had some small block in it, and it was lowered. He never showed it. All he did was you saw him cruising through town every once in a while, doing like a grocery getter. And that thing, I love that thing. I want to be just like that. So that's what got me into wanting to be low and cruise like that. And I did that, just slowly made my way, making my truck lower and lower. And accidentally one time, see, I got my license in '88, and I think 1990. I think we argue with this with Bullis and a few other people, but I think it was
The
1990.
old guys arguments is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, yeah, we argue because we can't remember about when the first mini truck nationals was down in Pigeon Forge. Some people say 89, 90, 91, and I accidentally ended up at the first nationals. Me and a buddy of mine went down there to do some go-kart racing, and I remember it there right at the hotel. As soon as you pulled in the Pigeon Forge, it was at the hotel there. And I don't know if you remember, there was a Nissan they extended like I don't know how long. It was red and white, and it even had a trailer on it. And this thing was in
Remember
the
that?
front yard. This thing was, I mean, it had to be 40 foot long, 50 foot long.
I think
And
94 was the first year I went because I graduated
really,
94 and I remember that a bunch of us went that year. I think it was the first year I went.
yeah. And so I saw that. We stopped by the show and pretty much hooked after that. And it's like, man, I'm coming back and looking around. What can you do to your truck? I didn't have any cell phone or nothing to take pictures or anything, and go back, and that was it, man. I was hooked on lowrider, or mini trucks and everything.
Now,
So
did you have at that point were you teaching yourself on how to do the work and build the stuff, or did you
oh
have someone show you?
no, God no, man. He had to learn everything the hard way. Right in your driveway and the gravel, jacking it up, make sure you don't get killed, and a socket set, and it didn't have any welder, didn't know how to weld or anything at that time. A cousin of mine, I remember this, a cousin of mine that lived in this. What did he do? I forget what he did, but he was over in this holler a couple farms over, and I took my truck over there and I set in one of my front end lowered, and he broke out a torch and just melted the springs.
That's all
And
we had
he
back then, though.
that's all we had. And he I remember him putting how low do you want it? And I kind of told him about where, and he put a wood block in there in between the A arm and the frame, and took a torch to it and lowered that front end down. And of course, I put blocks in the back. And that was, I thought I was in heaven there.
But
So
back then, you didn't have the Beltex and all this stuff that you could
no
lower stuff with. It was cutting or heating like that. And
cutting, heating.
And back to the kids that we were saying earlier, they don't know how good that stuff rode back then, do they?
Man, like a Cadillac,
It would beat
it
your
was horrible.
brains out riding down the road. So
I couldn't do it nowadays. I got to have
like
something.
bouncing down the road, yeah.
Oh yeah, it was horrible, but that's what we did. Want to be low. You got to make that balance. You want to be low or ride like crap, or you want to look cool. So we always pick looking cool. So
So
that's about it.
after the mini nats y'all went to, and you said it got you hooked on it. What what did you dive into after that? Is that about the time you got into the lowrider aspect?
Ah man, right after that, I can't put a timeline on it there, but around in 90 91. Just wanted to be low. I mean, I just wanted to be the lowest around. And we go out and do a little drag racing with our four cylinders. Thought we were cool in our trucks, but all I cared about was being low and big stereos, huge stereos. Put me up right against the steering wheel.
Yep.
But it went from that to spindles, putting spindles on. Man, I thought I was crazy whenever. And then smacking road reflectors going down the road. So that was great. So we were hammered then, frame almost on the ground. And
Static.
then yeah, static. I mean, if the road had any little dip at all, man, you're just scraping and just thought we were cooler than hell, who could do it and keep on doing it.
Well,
And eventually we had to you had to do something, and I finally got into hydraulics. Mini truck had an ad in there for hydraulics. I can't remember who the ad was right now. I'm sure I'll remember as soon as I get out of here, but they had an ad for
Red
hydraulics.
E Pro Hopper.
No, it wasn't Pro Hopper. It was, man, I think he was big in the, like dancing beds and everything. But anyway, they had an ad in there and I didn't order it from them, but I went looking because I heard Louisville was big into, lowriders and
Yeah.
stuff. And so I spent 3 days running around. I went to Ohio, Cincinnati, Columbus, Huntington, and ended up finally Lexington and finally in Louisville. And I just kept on going, trying to find somebody that had hydraulics. And finally found a shop there that just opened up, Scrub City. They made all the CCE hydraulics. My bad. They made all the hijacker hydraulics.
Okay.
And he just opened up, and I bought my first front kit off of him. I bought front hydraulics. Didn't know anything about it, how to put it on, how to wire it up. It took me a day to put it on and a day to wire up one switch. And it was hooked to my main battery. And it would raise me up and it would run the engine down. But all of a sudden, you're 8 inches off the ground, You're like, man, this is cool as all get out.
And what
So,
year was this? Early 90s?
man, this is late 90, 91. And I think later on in 91, I think I finally put rear hydraulics on it.
And the whole time you're teaching yourself how to weld and all that.
Oh, yeah. Well, what we would do is we would cut everything with, whether we had sawzalls or whatever, we would cut everything and we would take it up to this old guy up in town and we would pull our truck up in front of his shop and he would weld it all up for us. We would set it up. I want this right here. I want this right here. And he would tack it all and then weld it all up for us
Nice.
with an arc welder. And finally, he got to a point that I don't know if he got tired of doing it because we paid him, but I don't know if he got tired of doing it or he was just getting old and wanted to get out of it. But one day he just finally sat me down and said, Case, sit right down here, and made me weld. And he sat there and just watched me and tell me fast, slow, closer. And that was it, man. 2 days later, I went out and bought my first arc welder, which is, you should never buy one for automotive, you know. And that's how I learned to weld. And I would weld on my frame and on sheet metal with the arc welder for years. I probably did that for quite a few years.
So you didn't really go to any kind of welding or fab school. You just had the old
No.
man teach you how to weld.
Yeah, he just taught me how to weld, and then I went and bought one. And because we were doing some jobs, making a little bit of money, putting hydraulics on cars and stuff like this, and we just learned like that, man. I mean, nobody taught me, and he was the only one to ever sit down and make me do it in front of him and everything. So I always give him props. Art Stewart, he was an awesome guy. So
Well, well, now that you knew how to weld, you knew how to do the fabricating stuff. I guess that's what stepped you up into the lowrider world.
well, before that, once you find out that you can actually raise it off the ground, you're not going to be scraping everything on the ground. Well, you wanted to be lower, and then what came along then in the early 90s?
Body
You
drop.
know, there you go, body dropping. And saw my first one. Everybody's big on, which is awesome, was Pat Nichols' car,
Mhm.
truck. In what was that, January 93 it came out?
Yeah, because I
Um,
duplicated that cover, which
yeah,
a year further than it being a good even number because he didn't get the truck down. But yeah, it was January. That's why I made it a point to put the new the two ballistic on the January
yeah,
cover because it was January before. So yeah, that was January
perfect,
'93 issue.
perfect. But it was the year before. I remember this. I still remember this. January 92 issue. There was a black Toyota on there in a black and white photo that was body dropped.
With the graphics on it.
And it didn't have the graphics then. It was all black, but later it had those graphics right below the
Yeah.
body line, the like gravel or whatever it was. But it was that one, and that one. I remember that picture, man, clear as day, and that just drove me nuts. Drove me nuts on how they did that. And of course, we didn't have any cell phones, so I had to go and run up my parents' phone at the house, and I called around, called around, called around, called around, and it was basically just out of the mini trucking issue. And finally found it. It was from Trendsetters there in Anaheim
Yeah.
that did that one. And I was this close. I would call them, ask them what they did, how they did it. Can you do mine? And all this, and I was this close from taking my truck all the way out there. And they said they could have it done in a week. I was just going to camp somewhere for a week while they did it. And I was that close to doing it. And I made a phone call to him. And after a while, I found out, I don't know if you know Sean Mahaney,
Yeah.
but it ended up being him. That's who I was talking to.
Okay.
And I guess I drove him nuts enough calling that he finally got frustrated with me. And he goes, listen, all we do is we take the body, put it down over the frame, and whatever gets in the way, we cut and we deal with it later. And I was like, well, hell, I can do that, you know? And so I scratched that trip and did it myself. I body dropped it. I started, man, I guess it was like October of 92,
The S10.
the S10, October 92. And I was lucky enough, I lived with my grandparents and I would drive my grandmother's car to school and then come back. And then I had a little shop there and spent all night trying to body drop a vehicle that I had no clue what I was doing, channeling basically.
Yeah.
And I did that and I finally got done. And of course, the issue came out with Pat Nichols on there. And so that was only two body drops I knew of existence right there. And I got mine done like end of January or something like that, around that time frame. And finally had it out running around to all the shows in 93. So
So
it,
I
it
guess
was it was cool.
you were probably, I guess, the first on the East Coast to have a body drop truck. Then.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, that's what, I never saw one until the year after, people started coming out with them. But I only knew of Pat Nichols at the time and then that black one. And then, of course, all these mini trucker gods out here, they'll probably hack on it, about who was first and who did this. But I think Trendsetters or those guys, I think Sean and them did a Mazda. That was the first one they ever did. And it never came out at all. You never saw it at all. And so the Mazda and then the black Toyota and then Pat Nichols' car or truck. And that's the only ones I ever knew of, you know.
What do you remember the
So,
ones that come out shortly after yours on the East Coast?
oh man, I was first one I seen. trying to think of the first one I seen after that. Well, I remember talking to Todd Wilt. I think you know Wilt.
Yeah.
He had his D50, that was tandem. He had it at Pigeon Forge it was in Primer in 92. That'd be 93, I guess. And then, well, no, it must have been 94. He saw mine. He said he saw mine in 93 and was just, like, what the hell is this? And then he went home and I guess he did it to his. And then, you got his tandem that came out, it was on the cover of Mini Trucking.
Oh, it's been
Just,
redone a couple times since then.
it has, but hey, the first one's always the best. I don't care. So they can hack on me all they want. That first one's the best right there. So basically because that's the way I knew it, and everything. So,
So
but
after
anyway,
that, what became
that
of
was it.
your S10 though?
Oh, I ended up selling it. I drove it around. That was my daily driver. I drove it around. I probably showed it from 93 and 94. And, it never was finished, and if you know anything about, how mini truckers are, today's standards, it was hacked all to hell. I mean, I put that thing together. I channeled it and sheet metal. I bent sheet metal with a hammer and 2x4s, and I put it in with pop rivets and my arc welder. So you can imagine how that turned out. But it stayed together. However long
I've
I had it.
shot around quite a few things on mini trucks before, so I, I know. Like, if you see the issues, shoot around it, so don't show up in the magazine. Yeah, I've helped a few guys out over the years.
Yeah, I'd say so. I got to change that angle,
Yep.
but that's did that and had a great time with it, and ended up selling it because I got obsessed with Lowrider magazine. First thing I saw on the cover of a Lowrider magazine was the Redosaurus Dos. I don't know if you remember that one, but it was an Impala that they had that would hop, and all the arms on it would extend, and that was the early '90s.
I
And it
remember
was on the cover.
The Joker was big for them.
Yeah, but this was before the Joker came out a
Okay.
few years, and it was on the cover of Lowrider, and I was obsessed with that, and hydraulics. And I remember these brothers out in, uh, man, I can't remember their name, but these brothers that were in the Lowrider scene was getting big, dancing and hopping and all that. And I just thought these guys that had this El Camino were just awesome. And so I wanted to be like them. So I sold my truck and bought a red El Camino and put juice on it and took it around dancing for a couple of years.
Now
And so,
you got pretty heavy with that though, didn't you?
oh,
Or
got
is that the vehicle that you got heavy with?
Yeah, well, that's one I first got heavy with, and of course, didn't know what I was doing with that either. There was nobody around really doing that,
Yeah.
and it was hacked, but I took it around for a couple of years and played around with it. I had a great time with it. Met a lot of guys in Lowrider, a lot of guys in Louisville, Kentucky. Man, Louisville was huge in the lowriders.
Still a hotbed for lowriders, I feel.
Oh, it is. It is. I love it. And so still some of my good friends are still back there, all because of low riding. But
And that's one of those magazines that you hate to see go away. As big as Lowrider was, the fact that it went away and that scene is still big is still crazy to me. But I guess times change and the print
oh
aspect
yeah.
wasn't there.
Are they bringing that print back? Did they or
Not
somebody
that I
bring it
know of.
back? I don't know. I thought I
Because
heard
that
about somebody
lowrider was
trying
shut
to.
down when trucking and super street and import tune, like when all those the same, there's like 14 titles that got shut down that one day. So
Yeah. It was sad day, mini trucking and then lowrider and everything. But yeah, I was big into that, but I was still going to school. I graduated college in '96 and finally
did you go to
graduated.
college for this?
No, actually, what the hell did I go to college for? What, can't remember. My degree was in actually fluid power. So I got my degree in engineering and fluid power. So learned a lot about hydraulics. And the only reason I did it is because I was already doing it, and it was just come natural, And
Yeah.
I mean, you can see my grades go from C's and D's in college to A's, whenever I hit that because I was already doing it. So, but it
Now,
was fun.
now you said you and Todd linked up as well, Todd Wilt. So tell us about that.
Yeah. Man, I guess that was about 95, give or take a little bit. I built the El Camino and took it up to Carl Casper show in Louisville. I don't know if you remember that show.
Oh yeah, that's the big, I guess, East Coast lowrider show. Other than, or not
Yeah.
lowrider, but lowrider style show was a Carl Casper show, and then you had like lowrider, like the Miami was the only two big on the East Coast, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, you had that one and, and Scrub City put on that hydraulic competition there. And that was big. That was kind of like in February, that was kind of like the beginning, you know,
That was the
go
one
take
that
it.
was always inside like the arena or whatever,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Right there in Freedom Hall, where Louisville played basketball. And so I took that El Camino up there, and actually, well, tell you a story about meeting Todd real quick. And I remember I pulled up there, waiting to get in, our little pit area and everything. And there was a blue Cutlass back there with hydraulics. He was competing, and that was Todd's car. And I didn't know Todd at the time at all. And went in there, and his car did great. I think Pat Burke was there. I mean, there was quite a few people there that I end up knowing real well now. But I got up there and did my routine and busted both ball joints in the front within just a few seconds. And Todd happened to have two ball joints, and he helped me change them out.
Nice.
And that was it, man. Me and him hooked up, and he was out of Manassas, out of Virginia, and we hooked up, and that was it, man. I guess I've known Todd for almost 30 years now.
So
So
what did y'all wind up getting into after that? Because didn't you said you built a truck or whatever right after that?
yeah, I got out of college, and well, you got to go get a job, but I was making some money there all the way through college, just building some cars and everything at my backyard, kind of like Brandon, Brandon was,
Yeah.
and decided to try to take it to a shop, and ended up in south side of Indianapolis. And Todd moved down there and moved up there with me. He actually moved to Louisville for a while while I was finishing up school, and then I packed up and drove by Louisville, and his buddy happened to have a Toyota pickup there he wanted to get rid of, so we bought it, took it up to Indianapolis, found a shop, and spent what 2 or 3 days there building the Tonka toy, that yellow one that we took around the lowrider scene that year, and I think that was '97. We did that, and that was great. We ended up winning whatever lowriders championship, dancing championship that year, on the pro side. So
Now, what made you pro side? Were you sponsored by a company or something, or is it because?
now, well, I was sponsored by Scrub City. They had hijackers, so they would give me the stuff. But because I was a shop, that made me pro. And then me and Dean Carnes
Uh-uh.
and me and Dean Carnes and Pat Burke, we spent that whole year just running around the country, going to all the lowrider shows. Pat had a little truck he'd take, or he'd just ride with us. And then Dean had, man, he had several. He had a Blazer he took, and then he had a Bronco he had for a while. But he ended up winning he was in street class, so he ended up winning his class for the year. And we pack up in a rider truck. We didn't have a truck. We didn't have a trailer. We pack up in a rider truck and take it and show up to these shows with everybody rolling in on semis and everything, and beat them and come home.
So you
It
put
was, it
the
was
you put the truck in the back of a rider truck?
yeah, we put Dean, he had a little tracker at the time,
At this
little
point,
red.
I think the legality you've passed 7 years, so I think you're okay at this
Yeah,
point.
at that time, yeah, we would, oh man, I don't know. It's
How
pretty
would you
hard to
strap
say.
it down like that?
We'd rent it for local town and then, kind of
But how would
do a
you
little,
strap it inside the truck? Because there's nothing on the floor
oh,
of those.
oh, there ain't, but there's the front seats that are bolted down to the floor. So we would strap it to the bottom of the front seats. They had a,
Sounds safe.
yeah, we'd run it up on a trailer, and then we take those ramps off the trailer and put them on the trailer up to the back of the U-Haul, and then run it up there. And of course, this thing weighs 3 times more than what it previously did, because it had a bunch of batteries. And then we closed the door on it and put it in park with the emergency brake, and run a strap up so it didn't fall out the back. Run a strap up underneath the front seat, and that's where they had like a extended cab. And so
Yeah.
one of us would sit like behind the two front seats, and then you had a door there you could go to the back, and we'd haul it like that, and we'd run so many places that we just trade out. They had that, what they call it, a grandmother's attic
Yeah. Yeah.
above the cab. We threw a mattress up there, and we'd sleep and just take turns, driving. I remember driving out to Denver, driving to Miami, driving to Houston. I mean, it was stupid, man.
Now,
It
now,
was.
one of the questions I always ask when people talk about building stuff and doing stuff back in the day, I always ask, would you do that now if you had to?
Oh man, well, I wouldn't haul it like that now. There's no way. I mean, that was just plain stupid. And tell you the truth, we got pulled over in Texas one time like that. We were coming some back roads back, and Pat Burke was barreling down the road about 80 mile an hour, and we got pulled over. And first thing we thought was, well, they're going to call the DOT, and we're going to jail. And Pat Burke just jumps right out of the car. He goes, "I got this," and he just jumps right out of the car, walks back there to the cop. I mean, you couldn't do that today. You probably get
Oh,
shot.
yeah.
You know, but he walks right back there to the cop, and we see him just sitting there, looking in the mirrors, just talking to the cop. And he raises the back door like, like no big deal. Yeah, I'll show you what's back here. And we're like, that's it. I mean, we're going to jail. That's it. And and I can't believe it. The guy let him off. Gave him a warning. Pat closed the door, got in. We kept on going. I couldn't believe it.
Warning for speeding or for improperly secured cargo?
I guess speeding. I have no clue. I didn't care. I was like, that's it. Just get me home. So it was crazy time that time. That year was a blur, and we had a great time that year. Running around. So
That was that. What was the name of the shop that you were using then with you and Todd?
my shop was called Modern Designs,
Okay.
and that truck we called it the Tonka Toy, and it was because it was already yellow. It was great. And it was so we had a
I
great
guess
time that year.
I guess when you left the shop or whatever, I guess Todd changed the name of the shop around, or what was?
No, no. Me and Todd went up there to. I mean, I guess I don't know what was going. He came up here to actually work for me, but we were working in cahoots with each other. But we ended up eventually he wanted to go kind of his own way. So he probably lasted. I don't know how long we lasted here together, and then he kind of went his own way after that. And I still had the shop for about a year, and I was like, big city's not for me.
Yeah.
I'm going back home. So I packed all my stuff up and went back home.
Didn't Todd build recently that the Crew Cab International or whatever, the patina
Yeah,
one? I thought
yeah,
that
he's got that. In
yeah,
fact, in fact, he was supposed to take it up to a show last month to my buddy's show up in Ohio, but he couldn't get it towed up there, so he couldn't take it. He still got it.
I shot
So,
it for I guess street trucks back years ago at Mini Nats one year.
oh, no
I didn't
kidding.
realize that, and I'm like, oh, the name hit. I'm like, oh, that's who you. It was the first time I'd met him.
Yeah.
You always hear when you're, I guess, a kid in this scene, you always hear names, and you're like, everybody's larger than life, and then you
Oh,
meet them,
yeah.
and you're like, this dude's down to earth, really, really cool. So I think that was the first time I actually met Todd. But I shot it at that
Oh, man.
Wheels Through Time motorcycle museum there in Maggie Valley.
Yeah. Oh, cool. No, Wilt's great guy, man. Great guy. I mean, I don't know how many covers he's had on Mini Trucking, and and other magazines. I mean, he's just killer work. So.
So when you moved out of this, you said the big city. Did you open another shop back in the country?
No, I went back. I was still work. I had a shop, and me and my buddy moved in together down in Lexington, Kentucky. And I worked in a factory that made cars. So I worked in the factory there for a while. And
What cars did they make in Lexington?
oh, Lexington, man, it's they got the Toyota plant there. So they
Oh,
make Toyota, and I was actually in the satellite plant that made all the seats. So we made all the seats for all the manufacturers. But Toyota was right next to us, and I think they made a minivan there. They make a Lexus there now.
I
The
didn't realize they
Camry's
had
made
that.
there. Oh yeah, it's big time. It's like its own little small city. It's so big, you know. So, but awesome. But I worked there for a while. I think I worked there for like 4 years, and we had a little shop not too far from there. We would still build stuff, you know, and do some stuff, some friends. So, never really got out of it. But by that time, I was kind of getting out of going to shows and everything, you know, by the I guess 2001, 2002,
Yeah.
around that area, you know. And I would just go to friends and just help them in their shop, you know, just to do stuff. So
Is
had
that
my oh,
is that about the time you started teaching her stuff, or is that?
yeah, I worked at the factory there for about 4 years, and I man, I worked 12, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, you know, just to make some money to get out of debt and everything.
Yeah.
And got out of debt, saved up a bunch of money, and ended up left there, um, left there at the factory, and I didn't do anything for 2 years. 2 years, I was in unemployment for about 10 months. And then I had the money I saved up, and all I did was go around to some friends' shops, sleep on their couch, go work at place, you know, work in their shop and learn, you know, we're going to suicide these doors.
Yeah.
Cool. You know, go learn how to do that. You know, I'd get my hands dirty and try to learn how to do all that. You know, we're going to put air ride on his, on hydraulics on that. And just did that for 2 years, man, until I ran out of money. I mean, it was stupid. I was single and just, you know, it'd been nice to have that money now, but I sure learned a lot. I learned more then than I ever did, you know, going to school. So,
Now, you've been a teacher for a little while. How did you get into doing that?
well, I ran out of money. I ran out of money and figured I got to do something, you know, and I don't know. That's when the internet was getting, you know, coming around and everything, and you could, you know, search stuff and found out Wildtech was hiring. And I either wanted to go to Florida or I wanted to go to California just to go out and do something different,
Yeah.
and ended up in somehow Wildtech in Wyoming. And so I taught there. They had a street rod program there, and I taught there for a couple years.
How'd you get
And
into teaching there? Did
I
you
just,
have to show them the stuff you'd built over the years, or?
yeah, well, they just, they called me up, said, come on out. You know, they flew me out. Man, they were great. They cater to you and everything, you know. And then you got to give them a little demo on teaching on what you know. And so gave them a little demo, and they ended up hiring me, and I ended up packing up my truck and moving out, man. I lived in a hotel for a while. Ended up buying my first house out there and taught there. But I probably learned more out there than any of the students did because they had all the machinery, you know, they had all the
Yeah,
modern stuff, you know.
stuff you didn't have access to before.
No, not even close. I mean, in fact, I had to learn how to use them, you know. I
So
had to,
what
they
you
gave
said
me
you were
3 months
teaching?
to do it.
So you were teaching street rod. Like, what were you teaching out there?
Well, it was their street rod program was sheet metal, so we'd learn how to chop tops, lower stuff, section, you know, sunroofs. It was custom paint. So I learned how to custom paint there because I never painted before in my life. And so I learned how to custom paint there, you know, graphics and all that. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm by no means good at it, but I learned how to do it, you know. And so I did that for about, well, once again, my it seemed like I kept a job for about every 2 to 4 years. You know, I did that for a couple of years and then want to change, you know, do something different. But taught there, it was great.
And where'd you go after that?
Wanted to move back home, so I moved back home and right back
Seems to
in
be
the
a
shop I
theme.
started in.
Seems to be a
Yeah,
theme with you. You move, then you want to move back home. So
well, that's why I tell everybody. You know, here I go move. I go get out and do stuff. I go, you can always come back home. You know, and I think I've done it probably about 3 or 4 times.
anyway, you said you when you moved back to Kentucky, where'd you teach there?
Little community college there. They had the industrial maintenance program, and I taught it. And but everything around us was all automotive related. So all the factories, either built automobiles or they built parts for the automobiles.
Okay.
And so I got into teaching about industrial maintenance. And so I would teach it on campus, or I would actually go to the factory and teach those guys. So did that. I did that for 6 years. That's probably my longest job, you know.
That's where you were at when you linked up with Brandon Perry, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, and also when I moved back from Wyoming, that's when I met my wife. She moved out to Kentucky with me, and we lived on our little farm there. And back to my little shop over there I had and building stuff, and that's kind of when I linked up with him. And went to Heritage a couple times there, so good times right there.
Yeah. Well, I guess now is your next job after the college is where you're at now.
Yeah, well, I think I lasted at that job about 6 years, and then me and my wife got married, had a kid, and she wanted to, kind of want to be closer to her family, so we moved back out here to Wyoming, and I didn't have any place then, Plus, I go from people with the same mindset and same kind of stuff they like doing to, you know, nothing. Everybody's just into jacked up diesels out here. So it was kind of weird, but moved out here so she could be closer to her family and still mess around with stuff and everything. But I don't get into going to shows very much. I just kind of work on my own stuff here and teach, and that's about it now.
So, but you're at a high school now, correct?
Yeah, I was at a college there for about, I guess that was about 7 years. I taught at a college, taught industrial maintenance and taught automotive. And then we moved over to my wife's hometown, which is right on the Utah border. I'm about 80 miles from Salt Lake City, about
Okay.
40 miles out of Park City. And so, I mean, there's a big scene down in Salt Lake, big lowrider scene and everything down in Salt Lake. So, but
Isn't that where
you know,
Kendiggin is too?
yeah, Ken dig us down there. Went down there and met those guys a few times before they had their TV show and everything. And cool people. I mean, they were great. Take you in, show you the shop, what they're working on, and everything.
Well,
And they were great people.
I guess Dave and Kevin were both somewhat mini truckers when they started. So,
Yeah, I guess what's Kevin Severed?
yeah,
I think he's in Severed. Now I went down there to one of their meetings one time, and they had it right there at Kendig's.
nice.
And they had their meeting there, and I don't know if they still do it or not, but I just went down there to hang out with them. There's a couple guys I knew from a show I met one time, and just yap with them a couple times. But cool guys. I'm a little bit too far to see them quite often.
Yeah. So, with you teaching at the high school, what all are you teaching these kids now?
Oh man, you got to go back to basics. What the hell is a car? What's a wheel? What's a tire? I mean, it
Really?
is it is stone cold basics. So we go through just basically in a beginning class, we just go through how to maintain your vehicle, because they're all going to have one.
Yeah.
You got to have one here. And so we go through that, what things are and how to maintain it. And then I got a few kids that go second class and even a third class. The third class is like a project class, so they can bring their projects in. And that's the kids that are really into it. They really want to be part of it. I
So,
got I got 100 kids in class, and five are really into this stuff.
is that your like? I mean, you don't have one class that's 100. That's your total for
No,
the.
that's my total.
Okay.
Each class I got about anywhere from 15 to 18 students. And then of course my project class, I got anywhere from 5 to 10 because they're the ones that really like doing it.
Well, I know before we started recording, we talked about this. So I definitely want to touch on that. Is the fact that most schools nowadays are doing away with automotive shop and doing away with wood shop and all that stuff. Uh, how are you able to keep these kids interested in it and the school board backing it?
Well, out here in Wyoming, I mean, it's all energy, all industrial, a lot of manual stuff still. And so they kind of cater to the schools and colleges that still keep programs like this around. And it's kind of crazy when I come here to actually look at the look at the shop, I was like, I can't believe this is in a high school, you
Yeah.
know. And my first question was during the interview was, "You plan on keeping this around?" And they're all about it if they can, you know. So I mean, it can go away anytime. I'm sure it can, you know. I just hope it's after 8 more years after I retire. You know? So, but yeah,
So
most places are they got maybe one building that teaches a few things, and they bus a bunch of kids to them now. You know, they don't have anything actually in the high school
that's when
anymore.
I was in high school. It was the CEC, the Career Education Center. I took
Yeah,
electronics. There was masonry there. There was cosmetology there. Like
yeah,
it was at the school board, so we had to go there. Like I had mornings my senior year at my high school, and then afternoons I had at the other building.
yeah. I mean, that's the way it is most places, you know. And this place hasn't switched to that yet, mainly because they're too far away from each other. You know,
Yeah.
they a high school and the next high school is 100 miles away. And so, you know, they really can't bust a bunch of kids to one location. They got to have it there locally and everything. But, you know, funding's a big problem. You know, all my funding to even all this stuff here I got in the shop comes from the federal government. I gotta fight for money every year to be able to buy stuff.
Does
And
does your school have any other shop classes there, wood shop or anything, or is it?
yeah, yeah, we got a heck of a wood shop over here, and then right next door to me over here is welding and agriculture. He does both of those, and then we even got what they call cooking class and everything. I forget.
Home ec?
Yeah, home ec class. You know, so she teaches. It's a great, nice facility, you know. But they built this place in the '80s, and it's huge. It's a two-story high school, you know, and the population's gone way down here. So instead of
Really?
having 1,600 kids in school, they're down to about 700 and some here with a really big school. So it's kind of nice, you know.
Why is the population in that area going down? You think most people would want to move out of the city and into an area like that?
Well, you think, but you know, these kids, you know, it's kind of, I guess, kind of like I was when I was growing up in a small town. We get the hell out, you know, and see other things, you know. So most of them, if they're not working in the oil and gas field around here, then most of them jet and go down to Salt Lake.
So, with you teaching these kids, what is your view on the future of our custom vehicle world? Do you think it's something that's sustainable in 10, 20 years, or is it going away?
I, I don't know. I can't afford anything anymore, you know. I mean, I just like, you know, Brandon's doing over his shop, you know, he's still doing kick-ass work with minimal stuff, you know. And you know, I'm lucky here that I bought a lot of tooling. I got a little small plasma cutter and sheet metal tools and a mill and a lathe and two benders, and I've bought a lot of stuff. I can do a lot of work here. But I mean, just to being able to afford the parts, I just can't do it.
But like
You know?
the kids that you said are in your project class, you know, the ones that are actually like into it. Do you see the same drive behind these kids that we had back when we were their age?
Out of 100, maybe one.
Really?
You know, and it's very rare that I got a kid. I think in the last 4 years, I think I maybe had 3 or 4 kids that have went on to maybe like an automotive program or something, you know, somewhere else. But most of them do it as a hobby, you know, playing around in their own garage and everything. And most of them don't do it as a career. So, you know, I know people working in it, you know, especially, you know, like at dealerships and stuff, you know, they're hard pressed to find people. So I don't know what it's going to be like, man. I don't know.
So I
So,
guess with the stuff you're teaching though, I guess you don't get into much of the computer stuff now that all these dealerships and stuff are going to. It's more you have more techs now than you do mechanics.
oh, they're afraid of the computers and the electrical. First thing I tell them when we come in is if you're into electrical or if you're into computers, you'll always have a job in this industry. You
Hmm.
know, I mean, you can do whatever you want to in it. Be an engineer, be a technician, whatever. And they're scared of it. They want to do the hands-on mechanical work and everything, you know, changing out a starter and stuff like that. And they have a hard time diagnosing it, you know, troubleshooting.
Yeah.
So, you know, but I guess looking back on what I did, you know, that took years to be able to do. You know, you had to tear the vehicle down and learn about it. And we just
Uh,
don't have time to do that in class, you know.
Have you ever set any of your classes down and showed them any videos or photos from back in the low riding days?
Oh man, tell you the truth, I don't think I got any.
I'm
You
sure
know,
the
I
YouTube, there's something on YouTube. You could probably Google your name or something or search it on YouTube. I'm sure you could
yeah,
find something.
I don't know. I tell you, my main source of that would be Bullis. Bullis has got all kinds of VHS from way back in the early '90s and everything.
You need to
In
tell them
fact,
to
he
send
sent
you
me.
one and show this new class because I guess y'all are you already in school out there or are you getting ready to
No,
start?
no, we still got a couple more weeks, so I'm trying to get my own stuff done before the kids come in.
Be
But
perfect enough time for him to mail you a tape so you can show the class. Be like, all right, I'm going to show you who your teacher is. This is what I used to do. Now let's do it.
oh man, they wouldn't know what to do, man. They wouldn't know what to do. It's I
You
don't
never
know.
know. You might spark that one kid that's like, you can do something cool like that. How do you do it?
Yeah, yeah. It's great to have those are the best kids to have because you don't even have to teach them. You know,
They're
they're
hungry.
just asking. They're hungry. They look it up themselves. They'll ask you questions about. Is it says here that you're supposed to do it like this. Would you do it like this? And they get your advice, and that's about it. They teach themselves, kind of like the way we did. But I don't
Well,
know,
it's like
somebody that's never done it, they
Well, it's
just
like
don't have any interest.
my daughter, she's any of the guys she's ever dated, I'm like, all right, well, they don't know how to change a tire, they don't know how to jump their car off. And I told her when she moved to Charlotte, I said, look, I said, when you try to find you a husband, I was like, he better know how to change a tire, he better be washing your car. I was like, because dad's gonna put him through the ringer if he don't. But most of these kids now, like I said, she's getting to turn 24 here in a couple of weeks, but most of those kids like that age and under don't know how to change a tire. They don't know, if your battery in your remote for your lock and unlock dies, how to even change it. Like they don't know
No,
anything about it. And these are guys, not just the girls, but
yeah,
guys don't know.
no, I take it for granted. When they come in here, I assume that they've done something that's changed a tire or something with their
Yeah.
parents or something like that, or they know how to, I don't know, anything basic, and they have no clue. I had to start from the very beginning, about come out here, let's get familiar with the car, the names of things, how I go, I don't want you to look stupid with the lingo. Here's
Yep.
what this is called. Don't call it a thingy thing, whatever, it's like, I don't want you to look stupid. I'm going to try to save you the embarrassment because I had to go through that. So,
Well, I think one of my daughter's ex boyfriends, he said he was trying to, and she got mad at me because I laughed at him. She's like, he was trying to talk to you, Dad. And I'm like, he goes, yeah. So, I got this car. I'm going to make it fast. So I'm going to change the gears in the engine. And I'm like, you're changing gears in the engine. So me and my buddies started like nicknaming them gears after that. Like, oh, you hanging out with gears this weekend? She's like, he
oh,
was
it's
trying,
great.
Dad. I'm like, you got to know the lingo. You can't.
Yeah.
But I have a couple kids in my neighborhood that I've known since they were 10 or whatever, and they're both into the lifted trucks. I give them hell because it's that Bubba style, the big like mud grapplers on the aftermarket wheels with spacers, like that kind of thing. But
Yep.
it's like they'll question me on stuff, but it's like they're still into it, asking questions. How do they do it? What do they need to do? Like I had one of the guys, he's like, hey, I'm trying to hook up this train horn, the spare tire delete thing I got from Horn Blasters. Like I hooked the compressor up, but it keeps popping the pressure switch. I'm like, well, what'd you hook up? He's like, well, I hooked the compressor up. And I was like, well, what's your pressure switch set to? And he's like, what pressure switch? I'm like, is there wires you didn't connect? And he goes, well, yeah, there's this box that has like 4 wires on it. I didn't even know what those went to. I just hooked the compressor to the battery. And I'm like, okay, if you do a quick
Okay.
Google, it's like, that's your
Yeah.
pressure switch. Had no clue. But, like I help these kids with, I say kids, one of them's 18 or 19 or whatever, but it's like, for some reason that they come to me about a lot of stuff just because I'm thinking the only one in the neighborhood that messes with it. But it's like
Yeah.
they make fun of all my lowered stuff, but it's like, then they'll get in it and they're like, well, that's kind of cool. Well, how did you do
Oh
that?
yeah.
Like, you try to help these
Yeah.
kids because we've bought the junk parts trying to make stuff work and you replace them 3 times. Like, I could have bought the right part the first time if I wouldn't have bought three of the junk parts. Like, I'm trying to help you.
Oh man, it's hard, you know. It's hard. Yeah, I guess it's just the location I'm at. You know, these kids, they're interested in it. They're just not interested in the stuff I'm interested in. You know,
Yeah.
so that's cool. As long as they're interested in it, I'm good.
Yep.
You
100%.
know, and you know, a lot of people hack. I get it here at school with other teachers. You know, but I think it's the old nostalgia. You know, things aren't like they used to be, type of deal. You know, but I think it'll be fine. You know, I think it'll be just fine. You know, these kids will keep it going and everything. It just may be different. You know.
Well, I know like even the auto body industry, like, my buddies that are in that industry, like all the painters and body guys, they're about retiring age. And they're like, once they retire, like these kids aren't wanting to do that job. Like, what do we do
Mm,
in the future when we can't have our car painted or can't have a transmission fixed? Like, you throw it
yeah,
away.
that's what they do around here. Bad transmission, throw it away. Go get another one, a new one. There's no rebuilding stuff. You know, there's none of that stuff. And as far as the kids in the body shop, you know, I teach body and paint here. You can see the booth back there.
Yeah.
I teach a little bit of body and paint, and you know, the kids it's hard manual labor, you know, for not a lot of money. You know, I mean, you got to be well known to make a lot of money in it.
Or
And
put your time in and
yeah,
uh,
they don't want to do that. They want it now, and they don't want to put 20 years in before they start making good money, you know?
all these
And
kids think they're
that's,
going to get out of high school and make, as they say, I'm going to make six figures out of school. And I'm like, well, I need to go back to school. If that's the case,
dude, it makes me sick, man. I mean, there are kids around here, you know, they pay really well around here because it's an oil and gas area.
yeah,
So they pay really well. And the kids, if they're not making, you know, more than $20 an hour, they scoff at it. And I'm like, man, in Moorhead, where I'm from, you top out at 20, and that's like 20 years later. You know, it's
yeah.
just a different area and a different, I don't know, you know, just different area. So it's nuts. But
So with you being out there and not hitting a bunch of shows and stuff, do you ever miss all the shows back to back like you used to go to?
oh man, I miss it. I know I can't do it because, you know, kids and, you know, just regular life and everything, but I really don't hit anything. And so it'd be nice to be able to hit a couple things each year, you know. I do miss, I don't know if you remember Hamilton, Ohio? There used to be a show in Hamilton, Ohio. I used to love that show right next to Pigeon Forge. Pigeon Forge was a great show. Booger Bash.
Yep.
You remember
Chuck
Booger
show.
Bash?
Yep.
Hit Booger Bash, you know, just stuff like that, you know, I miss. But in the cruising, I know that stuff will never be like it used to be, you know. And
Well, I guess now.
I did come in for mini nats this year, and I heard Brandon when you were talking to him, I heard him say that he went down there too.
Not this year. He was there last year.
Was he there last year?
Yeah, because this
Okay,
year he was getting ready for the Louisville show.
that's right. And I was gonna be pissed if I missed him, you know.
How did I miss you this year?
Who knows,
Because
man?
I was
I went
there.
there.
Adam Madrigal flew in. That used to be, Musso Motorsports. He
Yeah.
flew in and hung out with us for the weekend or whatever. I don't think I saw half the people at Mini Nats this year.
No, I went there and I actually flew into Lexington, and my buddy Andy, he drove me down in his mini truck. First time I've been cruising down in a mini truck in years. So I was just all giddy, you know, as giddy as a 50-year-old can be, you know. And then we hung out for a couple of days there, but it was mostly just, I think I made it around to a third of the show, and the rest
Yeah.
of it was just talking to friends I haven't seen in years, you know. So I was all giddy and blessed, you know, for a couple of days there.
There were so many people at this year's show that I hadn't seen in years. I was like,
It was
what,
great.
this 2004? Like, what year am I in? Like, this is crazy. Like, people I've not seen in 15 years popped up. So,
Yeah, but we kept on saying the 34th, you know, they were saying it's the 30th annual, and we kept on saying it's the 35th annual, you know, because, you know, we started it, you know, it started back in 1990, you know,
well,
I'm
it
sure.
wasn't. Yeah, I guess it was 90. Well, I guess when Charlie did it, it was 94, though, right?
Yeah, well, I, I'm guessing he started it in 90. I'm not for sure. That's one of those things we have to ask Shannon Bullis about, you know, and get an argument about. You know,
Sounds like I need
because
to get
my
Shannon
buddy's got
on.
still got a shirt. He's still got a shirt from the second annual. My
Oh,
buddy Andy
Shannon?
does. No, my buddy Andy does. He's got
Oh,
one, I think, from the second or third annual, and it has the year on it. So we had to trace back. And don't quote me because our arguments. I could be on their side now, but it was about 1990 it started.
well, Shannon probably still wears the shirt from back then.
He probably does. He probably proudly wears it. So anyway, it's good times right there in Booger Bash, and
Well, I know I
yeah,
run into you about at least once a year at SEMA. We'll pass
yeah,
an escalator or something, and that's about
yeah.
it. So,
That's about it. I mean, when I moved out here, like it was a big deal, like I could tell my wife, anything I want to do. But when I moved out here, I told the wife that I wanted to hit SEMA every year, and I wanted to hit the Salt Flats Speed Week every year.
that's one thing
And
I've
so,
never hit.
oh man, come on out, man. So that's what I do. My birthday is in a couple days here, and my wife's Speed Week was last week. Yeah, so that's one of the two things I do every year. I hit SEMA mainly, just to go down there and see a handful of people, and hang out with a couple friends and any new stuff, and then of course Speed Week. So I got to go to Speed Week. That's kind of my new obsession right now.
Well,
So
we'll be back out there at SEMA this year doing my wife's Tahoe. We're doing
yeah.
I tried to get her to lower it and match my truck, but she's like, I got to have a lifted one. So,
Oh
that is, you got to keep
no.
the wife happy. So, yeah. I mean,
Where
it's
are you
just a
gonna have
4-inch
that?
lift. It ain't TIS Will's booth. Where my Sierra was last year?
Yeah, yeah.
Same booth.
Well, that's usually what happens. When I go out there, I got a list of about 5 things I want to see. So I always know you're going to have something, so I always got to run by and see it. So
I keep saying I think after this year I'm kind of gonna take a break for a minute just because it's been back to back to back, and it's like
yeah,
driving out there. That's 32 hours each way. Like it's a lot. Like I mean, even though you build something and it's done, it's like it's still a lot to get there and back.
oh
So
man,
she
gorgeous.
like I said, she's getting hers this year, building it to match the Sierra, red and tier to match the Sierra, the same color paint, the same brushed wheel finish, like but it'll be in the same booth area that my Sierra was in last year. My blue truck was in there. Chris's orange Tundra was there. Her Subaru was in the same booth. So, that company's taken care of me for quite a few years. So I
Good
said,
man,
hey,
good to hear.
wanting to build something for next year. And they're like, you got a spot, go ahead and plan it. So we had all the parts and the booth spot lined up by like Wednesday of SEMA last year.
Yeah, nice,
So,
nice man. That's a heck of a thing to do. I mean, once you get it done, just getting it out here and going through all that, that can be a headache. So,
I'm driving it out there and back. And for some reason she's flying out and back. I don't
because
see that being fair.
she's smart. That's why.
Well,
She's
Shannon,
smart.
speaking of Shannon, he's not hauling anymore. He's hauled me, a few
That's right.
times, but
That's right, man. I need to talk him into it. So,
I would, but the price per mile now is stupid compared to what it used to be 10 years ago.
oh man, it's ridiculous. I can't after COVID, I can't afford anything. So I
Well, this
just
is my, the first time I had was at SEMA 14. So
yeah,
this is 10 years in and it's my ninth placement. So it's gotten a little
killer,
more expensive.
killer. Oh, I'll bet you got something to go back and look back on. So you know exactly how much it costs now.
Yep.
So whatever. I just like supporting you guys, man.
Well, yeah,
I'm
hit
always
me up
pumped to
when
see
you're
you
out
guys doing
there.
good.
Well, hit me up when you're out there, and we'll link up. Like I said, I think the last time I seen you passed like on the escalator or something,
I
and
think so. What's up? Hey, see you.
I never know. One year you got long hair, one year you got the beard. So
Yeah, it's whatever my kids want. I miss this, I miss that. Okay, whatever. It don't matter to me.
it takes me a minute.
Everything,
I'm like, oh, that's Casey. Wait a minute.
yeah, everything's white and bald now, so it don't matter. Whatever.
I'm catching up with that. So
Well, you ought to come out to Speed Week one time, man, and see
I'm
what
gonna
they
have
got
to.
going on. It's awesome.
I'm gonna
So
have to. It's one of those automotive things I've not been able to do that. And the Texas speed deal they do.
yeah,
So
yeah, that'd be cool to go to.
yeah. Well,
So
I definitely appreciate you coming on. Like you've been brought up in a few past guests about being kind of one of those OG founder guys. So
oh man, I just like helping out people. I like seeing them do good, and if I can help them out, build something, make something. I learn, and that's about the only thing I care about. So,
Well, I text that picture before we come on, or I said send it to Mike Alexander. Said you're coming on, he's not. He goes, that's an old retired dude, all the time in the world.
man, I wish I tell everybody, I tell my wife, I got 8 more years. I go, I can't afford to retire, but I'll retire from teaching and do something else. So 8 more years, baby. So,
Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. It was good to catch up. Like I said, I guess we'll run into you here in a couple months here in Vegas.
hey, sounds good, man. I much appreciate it, and hope the
And
family's doing good.
I'm gonna have to reach out to Shannon and have him send you a video so you can show the kids what you've done. Like you need to show them what your history was.
Oh man, they won't care. They won't care a bit. They'll be like, "What is that stupid stuff back in 30 years ago? What's that?" And I was like, "Man, that's cool stuff right there." So,
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man.
all right, we'll see you, man.